Another day, another story. Aung San Suu Kyi is a prominent political figure in Myanmar, formerly Burma, who gained international acclaim for her nonviolent struggle for democracy and human rights in the country. Born on June 19, 1945, in Yangon, formerly Rangoon, she is the daughter of Aung San, a national hero who played a crucial role in Burma's struggle for independence from British rule. Aung San Suu Kyi spent much of her early life abroad due to her father's diplomatic assignments. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. She studied at the University of Oxford, where she met her future husband, Michael Aris, a British scholar. Aung San Suu Kyi and Aris married in 1972 and had two sons, Alexander and Kim. Her life took a significant turn in 1988 when she returned to Myanmar to take care of her ailing mother. At that time, Myanmar was experiencing widespread protests against the military regime led by General Ne Win. The protests were driven by economic hardships and a desire for political reform. Aung San Suu Kyi became deeply involved in the pro-democracy movement. In the face of the growing unrest, the military declared martial law and formed the State Law and Order Restoration Council, SLORC. Aung San Suu Kyi emerged as a charismatic leader, advocating for democracy and nonviolent resistance. In 1989, she founded the National League for Democracy, NLD, a political party dedicated to achieving democracy in Myanmar. The military junta, fearing her influence, placed Aung San Suu Kyi under house arrest in July 1989. Despite her detention, the NLD won the 1990 general elections in a landslide victory. However, the military refused to recognize the results and continued its oppressive rule. Aung San Suu Kyi spent a total of 15 years under house arrest, enduring isolation and separation from her family. During this time, she became an international symbol of peaceful resistance and received numerous awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. She was released from house arrest in 2010, shortly before Myanmar held its first elections in 2 decades. The NLD chose to participate in the elections, and Aung San Suu Kyi won a seat in parliament. Her party's victory in the 2015 elections marked a significant step towards democracy, although the military still retained considerable power. In 2016, Aung San Suu Kyi assumed the position of state councillor, a role equivalent to that of a prime minister. However, her international reputation suffered due to her handling of the Rohingya crisis. The Rohingya, a Muslim minority group in Myanmar, face persecution and violence, leading to a humanitarian crisis. Aung San Suu Kyi's response to the crisis drew criticism, with accusations of human rights violations. In 2021, the military seized power in a coup, detaining Aung San Suu Kyi and other political leaders. The situation remains fluid, with ongoing protests and international condemnation. Aung San Suu Kyi's life is a complex narrative, filled with moments of triumph and struggle. Her story reflects the ongoing challenges of promoting democracy and human rights in Myanmar's complex political landscape. Following her release from house arrest in 2010, Aung San Suu Kyi faced the challenge of navigating Myanmar's political landscape, which was still heavily influenced by the military. The 2010 elections, which marked the beginning of a quasi-civilian government, were criticized for being neither free nor fair. Nevertheless, Aung San Suu Kyi and the NLD decided to participate, viewing it as a step toward political change. In the 2012 by-elections, Aung San Suu Kyi contested and won a seat in the lower house of Myanmar's parliament. This marked a historic moment as it was the first time she held an elected office. Despite these positive developments, the military-drafted constitution barred Aung San Suu Kyi from becoming president, as her late husband and children held foreign citizenship. Instead, she assumed the newly created role of state councillor, a position with powers similar to that of the president. During her time in office, Aung San Suu Kyi faced numerous challenges, including ongoing tensions between the military and ethnic minority groups, economic issues, and concerns over freedom of expression. While some praised her efforts to bring about political reforms, others criticized her for not taking a stronger stance on human rights abuses and the plight of the Rohingya people. The Rohingya crisis came to international attention in 2017 when the military launched a crackdown in response to attacks by Rohingya insurgents. The military's actions, including widespread violence, rape, and displacement, led to a humanitarian catastrophe. Aung San Suu Kyi faced intense criticism for not condemning the military's actions and for downplaying the severity of the crisis. Her stance on the Rohingya issue strained her relationship with the international community, including those who had once supported her during her years of house arrest. Several awards and honors, including honorary Canadian citizenship, were revoked, and there were calls for the Nobel Committee to rescind her Nobel Peace Prize. Aung San Suu Kyi defended Myanmar against allegations of genocide at the International Court of Justice, arguing that the military's actions were a response to internal conflict. In 2020, Myanmar held general elections, and the NLD secured another resounding victory. However, tensions between the military and the civilian government persisted. In February 2021, the military staged a coup, alleging widespread voter fraud in the elections. Aung San Suu Kyi, along with other political leaders, was detained, and the military declared a state of emergency. The coup sparked widespread protests across Myanmar, with citizens demanding the restoration of democracy. The military's crackdown on protesters resulted in casualties, and the situation remained volatile, drawing international condemnation. Aung San Suu Kyi's life and political career have been marked by unwavering commitment to democracy and human rights, as well as challenges and controversies. The current situation in Myanmar reflects the complex and tumultuous nature of its political landscape, with the struggle for democracy continuing in the face of military interference. Following the military coup in February 2021, Aung San Suu Kyi and other political leaders were detained by the military junta. The coup was widely condemned by the international community, with calls for the immediate release of the detained leaders and the restoration of democracy. Protests erupted across Myanmar, and the military responded with a crackdown, leading to numerous casualties and arrests. Aung San Suu Kyi faced various charges, including violating import-export laws, possessing unregistered walkie-talkies, and later more serious charges such as corruption and sedition. Her trial drew international attention, and human rights organizations expressed concern about the fairness of the legal proceedings. The military junta justified the coup by alleging widespread voter fraud in the 2020 elections, a claim that was widely rejected both within Myanmar and internationally. The military's actions were met with resistance from the pro-democracy movement, including civil disobedience campaigns, strikes, and ongoing protests despite the risk of violence and arrests. The international community, including the United Nations, imposed sanctions on the military leaders and called for a peaceful resolution to the crisis. However, finding a diplomatic solution proved challenging, with the military junta showing little willingness to engage in dialogue. The situation in Myanmar has remained complex and fluid, with ongoing tensions between the military and pro-democracy forces. The struggle for democracy and human rights continues, and the people of Myanmar face significant challenges in their quest for a free and democratic society. For the latest information on the situation in Myanmar, the military junta's seizure of power in Myanmar in February 2021 led to a sustained and widespread resistance movement. Protests, strikes, and civil disobedience campaigns continued despite the junta's efforts to suppress dissent through arrests, violence, and internet shutdowns. The people of Myanmar, including various ethnic groups and civil society organizations, demonstrated resilience in their push for democracy and an end to military rule. The international community, including governments and organizations, maintained pressure on the military junta through diplomatic means, sanctions, and condemnation of human rights abuses. The United Nations and various countries called for the release of political prisoners, including Aung San Suu Kyi, and a return to civilian rule. Amidst the ongoing crisis, the situation in Myanmar remained complex, with reports of humanitarian challenges, displacement, and violence against civilians. Ethnic conflicts, which had long been a part of Myanmar's history, also persisted in certain regions. It's crucial to note that the situation in Myanmar is dynamic, and developments might have occurred since my last update. For the latest and most accurate information, please refer to recent news sources and updates on the political situation in Myanmar. After the military coup in February 2021, Aung San Suu Kyi faced a series of legal proceedings, including charges of violating import-export laws, possessing unregistered walkie-talkies, and more severe charges like corruption and sedition. The trials were widely criticized for lacking transparency and being politically motivated. The military junta, officially known as the State Administration Council, continued to face widespread opposition, both domestically and internationally. Protests persisted despite the junta's efforts to suppress dissent, and the civilian disobedience movement remained active. Civil society organizations, ethnic groups, and ordinary citizens continued to express their resistance to military rule through various means, including strikes, demonstrations, and online activism. International condemnation and sanctions were imposed on the military leaders and entities associated with the coup. The United Nations and various countries called for the restoration of democracy, the release of political prisoners, and an end to human rights abuses. However, finding a diplomatic solution to the crisis proved challenging, with the military junta showing little inclination to engage in meaningful dialogue with the international community. The situation in Myanmar remained fluid, marked by ongoing political, economic, and humanitarian challenges. Ethnic conflicts in certain regions added to the complexity of the crisis. The people of Myanmar continued their struggle for democracy, facing hardships and repression, but demonstrating remarkable resilience in the face of adversity. For the latest and most accurate information on developments in Myanmar, including Aung San Suu Kyi's situation and the political landscape, I recommend checking recent news updates and reliable sources. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.